an original MCM production.
We are pleased to welcome Todd Adams back to the club, who will be introducing our speaker. Todd was a member from 2001 to 2008, and then he took a break from Rotary due to work commitments, during which time he served as the CFO of a number of portfolio companies for a PE firm out of Florida. He's currently the CFO of a technology solutions company called PDS, headquartered in Brookfield. He and his wife, Carol, live in Brookfield and have 5 adult children. Todd, welcome back to Rotary, and please join me at the podium to welcome our speaker. So welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. It's great to be back. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our speaker this afternoon. My nephew, Brian, who's, I'll point out, sits over there, grew up in the Milwaukee area. And like he did, like all kids in the Milwaukee area, he did really kind of what I'll call the normal activities. And then he decided to go to UW-Madison for college. Like most kids, he had an inkling what he wanted to do. But what we have all learned, what you really want to do and what you actually do is 2 different things. Brian graduated from UW in '07, a terrible time to find a good paying job. After graduation, what was he going to do? After looking around, one opportunity was to tutor English to foreign kids in foreign countries in conjunction with starting his graduate work. One of those countries was South Korea. The money was good. As he said, the beer was good. He could travel in that region and really experience a lot of different cultures. So when you're 22, why not? So off he went to Seoul, South Korea. A few years later, at a group dinner in South Korea, Brian met this beautiful young lady. She was different than anyone he ever met. He kept in contact with her and discovered she was not only charming, interesting, and curious, but had a drive to do something extraordinary that he never saw in a person. This young lady wanted to change the world. Brian never really found out her true name. Even to this day, he doesn't know her true name. But the name she told him was Hyeonseo Lee. One problem, though. Hyeonseo was brought up to hate Americans. She grew up in North Korea, being taught that Americans, Japanese, South Koreans were scum of the earth. They were the enemy. North Koreans were the best, especially their leaders, followed by Russians and Chinese. Fortunately, as she matured, she discovered the world is a much different place than the leaders of her native country have taught her. After getting to know Brian, she discovered that Americans were not all bad, and Dennis Rodman was the exception of what a true American really is. You know who Dennis Rodman is? Okay. Trying to explain this to your mother and brother was a whole different story, though. During this courtship, Hyeonseo made a decision, a very serious decision, which most defectors wouldn't do because of the big risks involved, was to tell the world about her story. It wasn't enough to tell the world about her escape, as well as her mother's and brother's escape, which is unbelievable in itself. She wanted to tell the world about the realities of living in North Korea, and much of what the government preaches are lies. So she wrote a book in collaboration with Brian and a ghostwriter, The Girl with 7 Names, that Dan talked about. The book has been published in July in more than 20 different countries. Over 5 million people have viewed her TED Talk about her life in North Korea. She has, over the past few months, given talks to many influential groups and people around the world, including the U.S. ambassador to the UN. She has been interviewed by major TV outlets like BBC, Sky News, Fox News, CNN, as well as the many major newspapers and magazines in the free world. In fact, whoever gets Glamour magazine You see, last month's cover was Hyeonseo Lee. Even a few weeks ago, the Journal Sentinel gave her front page status. She has started on her second book now. For the people that really want to know what the latest news regarding the two lovebirds are, they did get married last year, and of all places in the world to do that, it was in downtown Milwaukee. Her mother traveled for the first time to the U.S. to walk her only daughter down the aisle. Even though she spoke or understood no English, she did discover that Americans were just like North Koreans, people who dearly love their families and want a better life for their children. Yes, I'm introducing a person who can make a difference in the world, as you will witness shortly. Please welcome Hyeonseo Lee.
Thank you for coming. It's an honor to be speaking here. The world can't understand when North Korean people will cry after the former dictators, Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il died. But those who grew up in North Korea, we completely understand that. Because we first learned to say, thank you so much to all dear leaders, to General Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. And in North Korea, every public place, and even in our homes, we hang their pictures on the wall. And every anniversary in the morning, we bow to their pictures. And whenever I received a gift from my parents, instead of thank them, I thanked to the pictures because I believed all the good things that their leaders gave us. So until 14, when I was 14, I didn't think all dear leaders Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il even went to the bathrooms or smoked or drank alcohols because I believed that they were gods. But in 1994, when I saw Kim Il-sung's funeral and I heard that Kim Jong-il married another woman, and I slowly realized that they might be human like me. So North Koreans are spend their lives inside prison without even knowing about the truth or the concept of human rights. So I never thought about freedom of speech, movement, press, and religion. And not knowing about the outside world, the oppressive life in North Korea seemed very normal. And that's why using elaborate deceptions as well as coercive tools of control, the North Korean leaders is able to indoctrinate and brainwash the vast majority of its citizens, depriving them of their natural right to learn the truth about the outside world. North Koreans are constantly inundated with anti-imperialist propaganda, especially against Americans. From the kindergarten, we learned that Americans are our primary enemies who killed many North Korean citizens and tortured horribly during the Korean War. So our hostile towards Americans was so high, and we are not consider them as a normal human being, and we consider them as we have to kill them off. So even, everywhere in North Korea, we have pictures like this, killing American soldiers, and even in our math textbook featured, like, there's many questions like, here you see 5 American bastards, and North Korean military killed 2, so how many American bastards are left? Like that, from elementary school, we learned like that. And then, so even today, we have rallies where people chant anti-American slogans, and children attack cardboards, cut out American soldiers, and even young kids singing hateful songs. As a North Korean citizen, we know that we can't say bad things or complain about the leadership, about the government. And we can't call their name without any putting specific titles behind their name. Also, even somebody who had same name as the leader as they are, they will forcibly change their names. So in North Korea, in DPRK, there's no name like Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il. Of course, right now the current young leader Kim Jong-un too. People, because if we saying by wrong things can be disappeared in the middle of the night, entire family, and because every North Korean citizens we know we have a prison camp, and then everybody is scared to be sent there because especially we don't know what happened inside the prison camp. But one thing we know is if somebody went inside, they can't come out in their life until even after they died. And one of my friend's fathers, he told to his best friend while they're having drink alcohols, and then he said, this system is unfair. He only said one word, and then he was sent to the political prison camp while his family was forcibly relocated to a desolate mountainous areas where it is extremely difficult to survive. And one of my distant relatives personally experienced this horrible fate. He came to North Korea during 1970s from China. He was Korean Chinese. He thought North Korea was going to be a communist utopia as the North Korean government advertised, but later he discovered that propaganda was not true, so he decided to cross back into China again in 1980s. And unfortunately, he was caught by the border guards and he was sent to the political prison camp. And he was sentenced to 30 years at the time. And his son was only a baby. And after he grew up, he visited several times to a prison camp to see his father. But every time he was denied access. So he never see his father, and his father was never freed. And then eventually, after his father died, even after he died, his son couldn't retrieve his body for a proper burial. As a North Korean, we grew up with public executions. And I saw my first public execution when I was 7 years old. I was shocking to see a man was hanging by his neck under a railroad bridge. And I was very young at the time, so I don't know what was considered a crime, but many victims who was imprisoned or executed for many absurd reasons, such as who killed a cow, or fortune tellers, homosexuals, defectors, religious people who was alleged to Solskin spies. And sometimes watching public execution is mandatory, so sometimes schools cancel their classes, so students have to witness the public execution. And the people who saw the public execution were usually terrified. And we accepted the public execution as part of our life automatically, since we didn't know the concept of human rights. And so the executions were a constant reminder to me that I shouldn't do anything to disobey the leadership, to the government. Otherwise, I will be killed exactly like the victim in front of me. So that's what North Korean government wanted from us. But the biggest killer in North Korea is starvation, which has killed more than a million people. Before the famine, actually, I saw some beggars and homeless people on the streets, but I didn't feel it was strange because in North Korea we have a social hierarchy, so I thought they're born like beggars or homeless people. But from 1995, I was so shocked to see so many people, so many beggars or homeless people filling streets and filling the markets. And especially, I saw people around me suffering. And when I visited my classmates' home during lunchtime, I found the whole family had nothing to eat for lunch. And also, a few months later, I read a death letter from another province from North Korea. There was 5 family members who were dying. They were waiting to die on the floor because they didn't have any food for weeks. So when I read that, I was very shocked. That was the first moment in my life I heard people can die for starvation. And I thought until the moment people only die, in movies or novels or during war period. But more for me, I couldn't understand was that we learned North Koreans are the most privileged human being in this world, and they are dying right now in front of me. And the most vivid memory from the famine was I saw a baby's mom was dying in front of me on the street. But there's many people watching her, but nobody helped them at the time because they are also in difficult situations. So during that time, if someone carry a dead dog on the street, I mean, in North Korea, they eat dogs. So if somebody carrying the dead dog on the street and people look at the person with enviously, but they didn't even stop look at the dead bodies on the street. So especially if we go under the bridge or near the train station, we can easily see those bodies, and those bodies weren't removed so fast. So the smells of decomposing bodies were everywhere and making people feel sick and goosebumps as they passed. And my city was right next to the border with China, and we had many visitors from China every day. So if we don't remove those bodies, it would look shameful for North Korea. So at that time, we have a certain people whose job is only get rid of those bodies. So they used hand carts to get rid of, and then they stacked the bodies in piles. And one time there's a man who didn't die yet, but they put him among the dead bodies. But I was so sad to see all the reality, but still at the time, I didn't know that we were suffering because of our government. I still strongly believed that we were only suffering because of American sanctions. That was what we thought during that time. So all North Koreans blamed to America. Nobody blamed to government at the time. But since I lived right next to the border with China, and China was the only country I could compare with my own, and also in North Korea, we had power shortages constantly. So even watching TV was very difficult. And then whenever we had power, and then I secretly watched Chinese TV because since we lived right next to the border, we have the Chinese TV signals we can have. So I just kept in my room, and I just blocked the window with curtains with thick extra blankets to prevent the lights. And I just saw Chinese TV, and it's just fascinating, everything to me compared to North Korea. Because from North Korea, we only have one channel, and from the channel, what I heard the most was every day just the dear littlest name, anti-slogans, all propaganda words. But from Chinese TV, like people even dye hair and wear jeans, have necklace or rings, which it's illegal in North Korea to have those things. So I have a bigger attraction and curiosity of the bigger world, and in the end, it made me to cross the border into China. But as a young girl, I could have never imagined that I would be separated from my family for so long, nor could I have realized that I have to avoid the brilliant new world in China, and I have to live in the shadows. I was hunted by the Chinese authorities all the time simply because I was a North Korean defector. And eventually I was caught by the Chinese police, and I was narrowly avoided being repatriated to North Korea by convincing them that I was actually a Chinese citizen, because at the time my Chinese language ability was pretty good enough. And because of all the surroundings or all the hardships surrounding me, I had to change my name constantly. So I became the girl with 7 names, which is the title of my new memoir. July 7, I published my memoir about my journey of self-discovery, hope, and the mission to risk my family to guide them to freedom. When I look back on my life, I sometimes wondered how I endured certain situations and difficult periods. It has been such an incredible journey, and I had to overcome so many obstacles in my life during that journey. So my life was like a roller coaster. But I was able to deal with many stress and difficult periods, but one thing I could never handle was being separated from my family. Most people around the world might take their time with family members and friends for granted, but for North Korean defectors, we are painfully aware how precious that time is together. Nobody should ever have to be separated from the ones they love. But I was lucky to escape the country in the end, but and made it to South Korea in the end, but too many North Koreans are still living in darkness, whether they are living in ignorance in North Korea or in fear out of their homeland. Also, even at this moment, there are countless North Korean women are suffering in China as they are sold as sex slaves or sold as bribes to men, even at this moment. So I think the North Korean human rights tragedy must become one of the international community's most pressing issue. And I'm very thankful for the growing support for North Korean human rights within United Nations and international organizations, but we need to do more. As free people around the world, we have a moral obligation to free North Korean people, and we might be their only hope. Thank you for listening.
An MCM production.